הניסים ועל הברכן ועל הגבורות ועל התשועות ועל הנפלאות, על הניסים ועל הברכן ועל הגבורות ועל התשועות ועל הנפלאות שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה, בזמן הזה שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.
Welcome to Jewish Life, a program presented in cooperation with the Jewish Community Planning Council of New York. I'm your host, Stewart Ain. Every week we present programs of particular interest to the Jewish community. Today we're going to be speaking about the war in Israel, Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th in 2023. And we're speaking with two people who were on solidarity missions to Israel since that attack. My guests are Sarai Crane, she's the executive director of Merkaz, which is the conservative movement's Zionist organization, and Mendy Teldin, he is the director of Chabad Mid-Suffolk on Long Island, New York. Thank you both for joining us. And Mendy, you were just there at the end of November, and as we record this, we're in the middle of December of 2023. So tell us, how are things there today as a visitor? You were there for a 10-day solidarity mission. Is that right?
Correct.
I remember going there during the Intifada and going into stores and the shopkeepers. Oh, thank you for coming. Shopkeepers couldn't do enough for us. What do you want? What can you do? I got great prices for you. And did you find the same thing going now?
Yes, very much so. People were surprised that we came to visit. They were humbled. They were thankful. They were grateful that, came from New York. Part of my group was actually from Australia as well. So it was an international group, and people were surprised, grateful, and they're doing their thing as the IDF or as the local citizens of Israel, not realizing, I think, that the entirety of the Jewish world is right there with them, and that fact that people show up and actually walk the walk that they are walking, walk in their footsteps, gives them a feeling of comfort, gives them a feeling that they're not alone in this process.
Sarai, you were there right after the war started, right?
Yes, I was there 10 days later.
10 days later. And what kind of reception did you get at that point?
We got a very warm reception. We were the first group in. I was with the Conference of Presidents, and people were very surprised that we came. The streets were very empty at that point. And in going into there were many stores that were closed, and the ones that were open were empty. Part of the issue is that they called up so many people from Miluim. You call up 400,000 people that you've really limited the workforce.
Talking about the reserves, military reserves.
Yeah, the Israeli reserves. So 400,000 people, that's a lot of workers. And, if you think about that, those are all people who are in the workforce. They're of that age. So there were not a lot of workers out there, and there clearly weren't people who were shopping. I found when I went into stores that they weren't even pushing us to buy, that the storekeepers that I know from my many trips to Israel were just so happy to see me. And they said, no, you don't have to feel obligated to buy something. But of course they did. So, you have to go in, the economy is being hit terribly.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Mendy, did you see what was on the shelves? Were the shelves bare, or did they lack a lot of items that you would normally expect to see?
Not really. We were walking the Shuk. We were in the Shuk in Jerusalem, and the shopkeepers the ones that we went into were grateful that we came in. One specific store that we were in, he said his partner was on the front. He's now doing double duty in the store. Some of the items were not in stock. Now that you mention it, yeah, some of the items were not in stock, but we did our part to stimulate the Israeli economy. My kids were with me as well, so they were definitely supportive of me stimulating the economy. And
what'd you bring back? What'd you
What did I
bring
bring back?
Yeah.
Well, thank God I brought enough stuff to Israel that for my kids that half my suitcase was empty, that I had enough room to bring it back as well. But we brought back some stuff for the community, some stuff for my wife, my kids. Of course, the IDF sweatshirt with my kids' names on the back is a mandatory shuk purchase as well. So we were able to partake. But they were, even just walking around, we went into the coffee shop and we bought 10, 15 different coffee gift cards for 100 shekel, $24 gift card. And just when we were walking around, we saw a soldier, we just handed it to them, and they were like, what's this about? Like, you know what? We're from America. I would purposely put on my American tourist accent and let them know that I can speak, I can speak Hebrew with them, but I didn't want them to think that I'm a local. I want them to know that I'm coming from America. So, right, we speak English with American accent and just give them a gift card saying, here, when you finish your duty, just go over to the shop, go over to wherever you need and grab a coffee. So,
well, Sarah said that
the economy that way as well.
Sarah said that the stores or the streets were empty. Did you find that the streets were pretty much empty?
Very much, definitely less. If you're going into the touristy areas, when we got to Ben Gurion Airport, I was the second in line at customs, at passport control. It was like, usually that room is packed. Usually that room is full. And we walked right in. The entire process was lacking people. It was lacking. It was, I was there COVID time. It was very reminiscent of COVID, of just not, there's just not people around. I went with my kids the first day, or the second day, we went to the excavation site at the southern end of the Western Wall, the Davidson excavation site. We literally were the only people there. At the desk, they said, we can't offer you a tour guide. We're happy that you're here. Go in. And we spent 3 hours. It was quite fascinating. 3 hours just walking those excavation sites without a tour guide, but you have complete access to anything you're doing. And you go into the shuk. You buy a bagel for 10 shekel. You give the guy a 50 shekel. Just that was the only thing that was happening there. So a lot of the touristy places were very empty, very empty.
So Ray, I know initially after the war started, airlines said they're canceling flights. Everybody except the El Al. What's the situation now as we into mid-December?
Only El Al is flying. That I'm going back in February. And only El Al is flying, which has, of course, upped the prices. And it's not so easy to get a seat. It wasn't easy, initially. We're down to one airline. And remember, United was flying from lots of other cities. So if you're flying from Chicago or you're flying from Washington, there aren't direct flights now. It's only El Al.
El Al. And is that added extra planes, or they're at full capacity now? Do you know?
They're flying pretty close to full capacity.
Yeah.
Mandy,
you took some pictures while you were there. Could you share some? Yeah, can you share some of them with us?
All right. So here's actually what I said before about just buying coffee. We were giving out coffee cards to the soldiers outside of the Western Wall. We went over to the soldiers there. Coffee. So the first day we went to Har Herzl, to the IDF cemetery, and the IDF cemetery, you don't buy a plot in the IDF cemetery. It's kind of first come first serve, and as they fall in battle, they're buried there. So we came, and it hits you very strong in the heart, because you see a grave from August, from September, and then October 7th, like 30, 40 graves, one after the other. And as we walked over to one of the soldiers, he says that his buddy, his roommate, that he was from Canada. He made Aliyah 2 years ago with a friend from Great Britain, and they made Aliyah together. They were roommates. They went through training together. And his buddy died October 8th. And he's been in Gaza for the last 2 months without any time to he didn't do Shiva. He didn't do the 30-day Shloshim. He was not involved in anything that part of the mourning process, and he just got out of Gaza literally an hour beforehand, and this was the first stop that he came to when he got out of Gaza. So it's a very, right in the beginning of our trip was a punch in the gut of these he's 19. You can't see it in the picture, but the grave right in front, there's 2 balloons, a 2 and a 0, because the boy's 20th birthday was 2 weeks beforehand. And it was a very sober welcome of seeing these soldiers. A kid just came out of Gaza and walked right in. This is soon thereafter. We went to one of the hotels where they had evacuated some of the families. I think the town's name was Yachni from the south. 80 families. A few days later were just evacuated to a hotel in Jerusalem, and we brought a costume. The girl wanted a Minnie Mouse costume. We bought an Xbox for the boy. The older boy wanted a gift card to some gaming sites. So we were able to come do that. And we went from the cemetery to there, and it was almost the mixed emotions. And I found throughout the whole trip there were competing emotions, and none of it made sense, and none of it really were you able to put in a box. You're going from the cemetery, you're walking to the evacuees. On one hand, you're bringing them smiles and joy. An Xbox, like in the big picture, what's an Xbox? You're just coming from the cemetery. But for these kids, that their life was turned over on a dime 6 weeks beforehand, and they're now stuck in a hotel for 2 months with who knows till when. They have an hour and a half of schooling during the daytime, but outside of that, there really isn't much structure to the day, and they're just running around the hotel. Just the ability to bring a smile in the context of a war was quite rewarding, and it was sweet. We met with a couple families, did a couple things with them. That was here's she wanted a Minnie Mouse costume. Now that made her day, and thank God we were able to give it to her. Here we went to the Hatzalah. This is actually a bus driver, a ambulance driver who October 7th drove in, and we heard the dispatcher over the radio. We heard the recording. The dispatcher asked, they didn't allow the first responders to really go in because it was a military zone, and the military set up a perimeter where you're not allowed to go further south. And he said, "We're going in." But he didn't ask questions. And the dispatcher asked him, like, "You can't go in." He says, "Don't worry, I have the Hebrew version, the Israeli version of the Navy SEALs in my ambulance with me, and therefore, don't worry, I'm going in, I'll be okay." And he looked at us. He's like, "I don't have any Navy SEAls with me in the ambulance." Like it was just, that's what we called. It's your brothers, it's your sisters, it's your cousins, it's your aunt, it's your uncle, it's your people. And we didn't think about it. We went forward. So we actually did we sponsored dinner for Hatzalah, and that's Eli Beard, director of Hatzalah, and he told the story. And afterwards, dinner up on top on the roof of Hatzalah. But this guy was the DJ. That's what he does. He's a DJ. He's just a regular 20-year-old, 25-year-old guy in Jerusalem doing his thing. He does entertainment during the evenings, and he got the call and went forward. And that was one of the more inspiring things of the trip. Just the everyday guy, the everyday lady who stepped up, took a gun to protect her family, took a gun to protect her community, or took the steering wheel of an ambulance and drove into danger, into a war zone, and sacrificed so much. So that it was both maddening, depressing, inspiring, joy. Like there were so many different components to this experience. Tell me when you saw enough pictures. Hold on a second. Here's the hostage family. So in Tel Aviv, they took over a building of all the hostages are coming there. And there's one floor that deals with diplomacy, one floor that deals with the media, one floor that's just like a lounge for the families to hang out, and everyone trying to advocate for their family, and they're trying anything. They don't know what will work, won't work. But here's a story of a young man. His brother was at the party. It was at the festival down south, and his brother. He says, "I don't know if he's alive. I don't know if this is all for naught, but we're doing everything that we can to advocate for those that are important to us." His brother said has an ice cream shop in Tel Aviv, in the market over there. He hasn't paid his rent in a couple months, and so thank God one of the guys in the group actually went and without telling anyone, spoke to him afterwards and paid the rent for his ice cream shop from October, November, and December, just to be able to give his family just that peace of mind. So you also walk into every scenario, and you never know who's on the other side of the room. If it's a hostage family, it could be a wife, it could be a mother, it could be a daughter, it could be every part of this trip. You have to just be present and open to what you're going to experience, because you have no idea what you're about to encounter. You have no idea who it is and what they're experiencing. We went to the wounded soldiers. You know, you walk in, this is a guy who saved the kibbutz, killed 30 terrorists single-handedly, and then him and his buddy, and the last minute, you know, the last terrorist shot his buddy and killed his buddy. It was the last guy. Like, you do so much, you save a town. So it was intense. You know, his leg is partially amputated, and he literally saved lives, risking his own, and lost his buddy's life. I'm pretty sure the buddy he lost was his commanding officer, was actually his brother-in-law or his future brother-in-law. Yeah, the girl on the left is his fiance, his future wife, and like, it was her brother that was the commanding officer. Her brother was the commanding officer. It's complicated. There's like there's nothing to say. There's nothing to say. Sometimes there's a silver lining. Sometimes there's something nice about it. Sometimes it's just you're there to give a hug.
Yes, yeah. You went down to one of the kibbutz in the south, Berry, is that right?
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of that. Yeah, here. This is if you can see on the right-hand side over there, that's the fence to Gaza, and basically the terrorists came in, cleared out that fence, or drove through the fence, and just blew up this house. Like, the family was inside of we walked through this house. It's gutted. There's ashes everywhere. Here's the kitchen, and I guess it hit me strong. I took this picture because the clock there is at 8:30, just frozen in time. And yes, this was a house that woke up Simchas Torah in the morning and went around about their thing, and now this is what's left of it. We were hearing from the first responders, and they kept telling us over and over again to tell the story of October 7th, because the world's going to forget, which sadly they already have. And I think it's hard for our Western minds, us to even imagine the things that they experienced in the next house over than this. So here's a picture. So Zaka is the organization that goes to a scene of a terrorist attack, and they look for body parts. According to Jewish law, every part of the body has to be buried, the blood, cells, anything. So they would go into every house, and you can see on the wall there, they would then, you know, paint on the wall like, Zaka's been here, and we've looked through the house. But he was describing in this house they went in, and they found a mound of ashes, and he wasn't sure what it is. And he walks in, and he picks it up, and he realizes it's a baby. And he looks a little closer, and he sees the skull, and there's a kitchen knife through the head of the skull with a hammer next to it. Meaning, just trying to imagine what happened there. And there were times that the people that went into Be'eri, the Zaka, the first responders, they couldn't anymore. They just stopped, and they walked down, and they had to go home. They couldn't talk to people. No one would imagine, no one would believe what they saw. And it was here's a sukkah, right? It's a sukkah,
right,
that still has its decorations attached to the house, and that's how it's frozen in time. It's just frozen in time.
Yeah, I saw the father interviewed. He said his son was supposed to help him take down the sukkah. He said, "Okay, I'll get over there," and then it never happened. And so the sukkah is still up. He's waiting for the son to come back to help him.
Yeah. So you hear from the guys what they. You know, you see a building. It looks like it's a war zone. It's not a war zone. It's a terrorist attack. And right? The Be'eri is not a war zone. It was a malicious, horrific attack on people living their life. And you see the building, you see the burnt, and then you hear the actual stories of the people that live there, and you hear the first responders what they saw. And you know, the 43-minute video that they're showing to politicians, influencers, etc., is the watered down version, and they won't show the real footage because it's disrespectful. There's a strong part of our tradition of kavod hames, of honoring those that died and not being disrespectful to them, and showing those videos are just disrespectful to them. So you walk the streets, and one of the people, he walked us around, and he was showing us what his October 7th looked like. And you know, he ran out of ammunition. He killed a couple terrorists and took their guns, and then had a couple more rounds. And the reserves came in. 2 guys came in and gave him a little more ammunition for another couple hours. But it took 16, 18 hours until they were actually able to go back to come out of wherever they were hiding.
So Ray, here in the United States, the American Jewish community has started a national mobilization week, and they're doing all kinds of things. There's a 10/7 project day book that tells people what's going on. Can you talk about some of the things?
Yeah, but I just want to comment on one of the things that Mendy said, which is that we are all very aware, or at least many of us are aware of the atrocities and of the people who are directly hit. But the impact is really going to the entire country. That when you talk about the number of people who have been called up and in the army, that for a country that normally has about 170,000 people in the army, to now have over 500,000, and what does it mean? These people are not only missing from their jobs, they're missing from their families. What does it mean to children when their father isn't home? And what does it mean to a mother when she's now a single parent with young children? What does it mean to have sirens going off at night and that's still happening? So the impact continues, and that this is an incredible burden to live with. And the psychological impact of this on the entire country is very deep, and it's going to go on for a long time. And many of us in the United States, getting back to Stewart's question, that we're troubled by this. We feel like we're carrying it, and we want to do everything that we possibly can to help and to make this situation better. That we met with hostage families. I met with them in Israel. I've met with them here. I feel like some of them are now my friends. And the scary part is there were people I actually did know, that when they came to meet with the Conference of Presidents during that mission, and somebody got up to speak talking about his relatives, and I looked at the man and the sudden was, oh my goodness, I know you. And when I went to talk to him afterwards and I introduced myself, he said, oh, of course I know you. And you realize it's very personal. And that there were a lot of people who were former Americans who were involved in this. So we in the American Jewish community are trying to do everything we can. The outpouring in Washington was unbelievable. Nobody could have anticipated the number of people who showed up on a week's notice. That was amazing. And it was a big deal to get there, that, the buses came in a mile from the local metro stop, and you had to get up at the crack of dawn to be there. And we all did it we were all grateful. It wasn't just that we did it. We were grateful for the opportunity to show our love and support. And that continues, that the mobilization.
And how many showed up? What do they say, about 300,000 showed up?
Yeah, and that was incredible. We thought we did a good job in 2002 with 100,000, but this was triple that. That was beyond amazing.
Yes. And if I could say, the President of the United States has been more than amazing.
I was actually in Israel. I landed the same day that he did in October. I did get out of Ben Gurion before he arrived. That was the good news. But I watched it from my hotel room, and I have to say I cried. That when Air Force One landed at Ben Gurion and the President of the United States got off that plane as a show of support, I felt good to be an American. And, and this is an amazing thing. And by the way, when I was in Israel, we met with the Prime Minister, and he had very little time to talk to us, which was okay. We weren't his number one priority, but he needed to leave because the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was there. And we were thrilled that he was meeting with the Prime Minister of the UK, way more important than meeting with us. So there's been a lot of support, and that's a really good thing. But we need that support to continue. We need Congress to provide the aid. And there's a national mobilization, and there's a website. You type in your zip code, and up comes all of your representatives with their phone numbers and with talking points. And we urge everyone to make those calls, and not to make them just once, but to make them repeatedly. And when you're done calling your representatives, call a few more. Let them know that America cares, and that this matters to us, and that this is a big humanitarian concern, and we're not going to let it drop. We need the hostages to come home. We need Israel to get the aid that it needs, and it's going to need a lot of aid. While Israel's certainly not a third world country, and really under good circumstances can take care of its citizens. Military aid is a different story. Now, the amount of rebuilding, we just saw those horrific pictures, but think about it, the number of people who are displaced is unbelievable. And they've now been displaced for 10 weeks. And will they ever really be able to go back to their homes? And what do they need? And it's so wonderful that you brought things that will make the children happy, because think about it. They're missing their home. They're missing their clothing. The number of people that we met with who said, the clothes I'm wearing aren't mine. They were a gift, because all of my clothes are either destroyed or in that home I can't get to anymore. What does it mean to lose everything you own? And while we don't want to be super materialistic, we all have things that matter to us, that provide us with comfort, and that level of comfort is gone. So we need to do this. There is the 10-7 project. You can get information on a daily basis and we're all addicted to it. We all just need to know what's going on, what's happening, that we don't want to feel like we're out of the loop. And this is amazing for us, that for those of us who lived through the 6-day war, it was 6 days. The Yom Kippur War was 3-ish weeks. This is already 10 weeks, and the end is not in sight. And we don't know what the end means, because there can't be an end that leads to more terrorist attacks.
And it's not just the South. Also in the North, you've got Hezbollah. You have all those people. 200,000, I forget the figure is, who've left their homes because Hezbollah has been firing into the northern part of Israel, and they are well south of the Litani River, which was the UN said the resolution 1701 said that Hezbollah must be north of Litani River. Now they're 15 miles south of the Litani River, and you can't live there because these guys can just fire the rockets and come into your home and whatnot. So people have been forced to leave the north, and now they're in other parts, living with friends, living in hotels, what have you.
Some of those people have actually come to the United States, at least briefly, where they needed a breather, people with young children or people with elderly parents who've just needed to get away from the stress. And the American Jewish community has been incredibly receptive, that there were people who were working on settling these families. A lot of the people who had been working on settling Ukrainian refugees shifted gears and started settling Israelis. And there have even been some landlords who have provided 6 months of free rent. The day schools were amazing. They opened up their classes and took in as many students as they can. We're now finding that it was temporary, and a lot of these people are now going back to Israel, despite how difficult the situation is, but they figured out how to deal there.
Good.
This is a long-term process, and
Good.
we need to think it through as to what it means. But there are all
Good.
kinds of projects and way we can help here.
Well, this has been Jewish Life. Saray Crane, Mendy Teldin. My name is Stewart Ain. Until next week, thank you all very much for joining us. Until next week, have a good one.